It is May 19th, 2026, 23 days from the opening ceremony at the Azteca, 23 days from the moment the biggest World Cup in football history is supposed to begin. And this morning, FIFA is in crisis talks with Iran. Not meetings, not schedule updates, crisis talks over whether a qualified nation, a team that earned its place through 2 years of competition across the entire Asian football continent, will actually be on a plane to the United States when their Group G campaign starts in Los Angeles on June 21st. That conversation is happening today, right now as you watch this, and it's the most visible thread in a crisis that has been building around this tournament for months, one that touches workers, fans, host cities, and the fundamental question of whether FIFA can actually deliver on the promises it made when this tournament was awarded 8 years ago. 23 days, 6 stories, all of them breaking at once. Let's go through every single one. Let's start with Iran, because this is the situation that has escalated the most dramatically this week, and understanding the full sequence of events requires going back further than most coverage has gone. Iran qualified for the World Cup. They earned it. They're scheduled to play all 3 of their group stage matches in Los Angeles, against the United States on June 21st, against Egypt on June 25th, and against New Zealand on June 29th. These fixtures were confirmed when the draw was made in Washington in December. In late February, a regional conflict broke out. The fallout created immediate questions about Iran's ability and willingness to send a team, staff, and officials to the United States. Iran's Football Federation president, Mehdi Taj, flew to Toronto with a delegation for the FIFA Congress in Vancouver. He had a valid visa, he landed at Pearson International Airport, and he was denied entry by Canadian immigration officials, turned away at the border. The stated reason was his alleged links to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. Canada classified the IRGC as a terrorist organization in 2024. Taj and his delegation boarded the first available flight back to Turkey, calling the treatment at the airport an insult to the Iranian nation. The consequences were immediate and significant. Taj returned to Iran and announced publicly that Iran's participation in the World Cup would depend on guarantees from the United States and FIFA that the IRGC would not be insulted during the tournament. He named specific conditions: entry for players and staff who have served in or have connections to the IRGC, the presence of Iran's flag and national anthem at all matches, increased security for the delegation, and a formal assurance of respect for Iranian military institutions. Here's what makes this crisis different from every previous dispute about Iran's participation. The IRGC classification is not just a diplomatic issue, it's a legal one. The United States, like Canada, designates the IRGC as a terrorist organization. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said directly that no one with ties to the organization would be admitted to the country. Iran has placed the responsibility for getting its players and officials into the U.S. firmly in FIFA's hands, and as of 11 hours ago, this morning, FIFA and Iran are in what are being described as crisis talks over a resolution. The Iran squad has been named. Veterans Mehdi Taremi and Ali Reza Jahanbakhsh are included. The squad is preparing in Turkey, but as of today, May 19th, their visas have not been confirmed. The IRGC entry question has not been resolved, and the tournament is 23 days away. This is not a hypothetical anymore. This is a live operational crisis. Here's where things get interesting, because the Iran situation is the headline, but it's running parallel to a story in Los Angeles that has been quietly building since April and exploded into football news this week. 2,000 workers at SoFi Stadium, the venue hosting 8 World Cup matches including the opening U.S. match against Paraguay on June 12th, do not have a finalized labor contract. Not unresolved minor details, no contract at all, with 23 days to go. The union representing those workers is Unite Here Local 11. Cooks, bartenders, servers, dishwashers, food service employees, the people who will be serving 69,000 fans at every match at SoFi. And they have issued a strike threat that nobody at FIFA or at Kroenke Sports and Entertainment, the stadium's owner, has publicly addressed. The union's three demands are specific and documented: an official declaration guaranteeing that ICE, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, will have no role at World Cup matches in Los Angeles; protection of workers' jobs during the tournament; support for affordable housing programs for hospitality workers in a city where the cost of living has reached crisis levels. The ICE demand is the crucial one, because the acting director of ICE, Todd Lyons, publicly confirmed that his agency would play a, quote, key role during the World Cup. That statement from the head of federal immigration enforcement about the world's biggest sporting event was the trigger for the union's escalation. 2,000 workers who feed and serve 69,000 fans per match heard the head of ICE say his agency would be present at their workplace, and they responded by saying, "Then we won't be there." Maria Hernandez, an organizer for Unite Here Local 11, put it plainly in a statement this week. Without these cooks, without these dishwashers, without these servers, there are no games. She was right. And FIFA, which has not issued any comment on the strike threat as of today, appears to be hoping the situation resolves itself before it becomes a stadium operations catastrophe. It has not resolved itself, and Los Angeles Magazine reported this morning that roughly 2,000 workers still do not have a finalized labor contract as the World Cup approaches. Think about what a strike at SoFi Stadium during a World Cup match actually means, not in abstract terms. Concretely, 69,000 fans inside the venue, no food service, no bar service, no hospitality staff, on international television, for a tournament that FIFA's president described as the equivalent of 104 Super Bowls. But that's only part of the story. Let's talk about New Jersey, because this dispute has now produced numbers specific enough to understand exactly what's at stake. MetLife Stadium hosts 8 matches, including the World Cup final on July 19th. It sits in East Rutherford, New Jersey, across the Hudson from Manhattan. Getting there from the city requires public transit, specifically a train from Penn Station that takes approximately 15 minutes and covers 14 kilometers. That journey, which normally costs $12.90 return, will cost $150 return on match days. New Jersey Governor Mikey Sherrill went to social media in April and published a statement that is worth reading in full because it lays out the financial reality of co-hosting a World Cup with FIFA in a way no official document has done so clearly. Her administration, she said, inherited an agreement where FIFA provides $0 toward transportation for the World Cup. Zero. Not a contribution, not a discount, not a partial subsidy, nothing. New Jersey Transit is left with a bill of $48 million to safely move 40,000 fans to and from every game. At the same time, FIFA is making $11 billion off this World Cup and charging fans up to $10,000 for a single ticket to the final. FIFA responded by saying it was quite surprised by the governor's approach. It said the original host city agreement required free transit for fans. It then acknowledged that those requirements were modified in 2023 to simply require access to transit. Not free access, just access. And it said it was not aware of any major events previously held at that stadium where organizers were required to pay for fan transportation. The governor then negotiated a partial reduction. The round-trip price came down from $150 to $105. Not through FIFA paying anything, through Sherrill reaching out to private sponsors and other sources to reduce the tab by 30%. $105 for a 15-minute train ride, with no discounts for children, seniors, or people with disabilities, and parking at the stadium has been entirely eliminated. FIFA insisted on a security cordon covering the entire parking lot, except for premium spaces costing $200 to $300 per spot, operated by FIFA itself. The New York governor, Kathy Hochul, weighed in separately, saying she wouldn't let the same thing happen to MTA riders. She was not part of the New Jersey arrangement. What this dispute revealed, more than anything else, is the commercial structure of how FIFA runs a World Cup. The federation projects $11 billion in revenue. It pays nothing for the transport infrastructure that gets fans to the stadiums. It eliminates parking and sells premium spaces at its own price. And when host city governments ask for a contribution toward the costs their taxpayers are bearing, FIFA calls the approach surprising. Now, here's an angle that's been hiding in plain sight all week, and it's one that football media has barely touched. At a press event at SoFi Stadium on May 12th, exactly 1 week ago today, FIFA hosted the 30 Days to Kickoff media event. Journalists were invited, the pitch surface was being prepared, the venue was being dressed for its tournament role. And there was something at that event that told you more about this tournament's priorities than any press release. An extended pitch surface area had been installed, requiring the removal of corner seating sections and the construction of a raised custom field platform to accommodate FIFA's required dimensions. The seats were gone, the platform was in. The cameras showed a cavernous space where 69,000 fans would sit, with sections visibly stripped to meet a specification that apparently couldn't be achieved without removing paying customers from the building. FIFA's Chief Events Operations Officer, Haimo Shergi, was at that event. He's the same official who warned that New Jersey Transit's pricing had a chilling effect on the tournament. He's been visible all month defending FIFA's commercial model, defending ticket prices, defending the decision to contribute nothing to transport. He hasn't commented on the Iran's visa situation. He hasn't commented on the SoFi workers' strike. And he hasn't commented on a detail that Al Jazeera reported 2 days ago, that in the UK, several venues have decided they will not screen World Cup matches at public watch parties because of poor fan behavior at previous events in 2023. One of the most basic ways that people who can't afford tickets experience a World Cup, gathering in a pub, a fan zone, a public space, watching together on a big screen, is being canceled in parts of the country where football is the national heartbeat. Let's bring it back to what all of this means for the players, because they're the ones who are going to walk out on these pitches in 23 days, and most of them have spent 4 years working toward this moment without any of this noise being their fault or their concern. The Iran squad named this week includes Mehdi Taremi playing for Olympiacos and Ali Reza Jahanbakhsh. They trained in Turkey last week. They're ready to play football. They just don't know yet if the visa process will let them do it. A player named Sardar Azmoun posted a picture on Instagram in March of a meeting with Dubai's ruler. Context that matters given the regional tensions of the past 3 months. Every member of that squad has been living with this uncertainty since February. For the players at SoFi, for the U.S. national team, for Paraguay, for the 6 other nations playing at Inglewood, the backdrop of a possible worker strike is not abstract. These are the people who prepare the pre-match meals, who run the hospitality suites, who keep the stadium operational. If Unite Here Local 11 follows through and the contracts aren't resolved in the next 3 weeks, those players step onto a pitch in a venue running on emergency staffing arrangements, in a city where the tournament's arrival has coincided with a worsening affordable housing crisis that the workers themselves are living through. Rodrigo Lipara, a 52-year-old Argentinian fan from Buenos Aires who spoke to ESPN this week, described why he decided not to come. The travel distances between Argentina's group stage venues, he said, the hotel costs, the food prices, the tickets, and then this. When you add everything, I think it really discourages Argentinians who are not, obviously, upper class. He said it plainly. This is a tournament for the upper class, and from where he's sitting, the maths are clear. Here's the bigger picture, and it's worth sitting with properly. FIFA's formal crisis count as of today, May 19th, 23 days from kickoff, includes a nation whose participation is still not operationally confirmed, a workforce threatening to walk out, a host city in a public financial dispute with the organization over $48 million, a broadcast gap of 3 billion potential viewers across 2 countries, hotels describing the event as a non-event, and the governing body whose president had to have his sold-out claim corrected by his own communications team. Any one of those issues would be a story at any previous World Cup. All of them together, arriving simultaneously 3 weeks before the opening whistle, is something different. It's not a crisis in the sense that the tournament collapses. FIFA has shown across decades that it takes a great deal more than commercial shortfalls and labor disputes to stop a World Cup from happening. The matches will be played, but it is a crisis of trust. And trust, once it erodes, between FIFA and host cities, between FIFA and fan communities, between FIFA and the workers who make the stadiums run, doesn't come back quickly. The best case from here is the one football always eventually delivers. The Iran situation is resolved this week, the SoFi contracts are signed, the transport disputes become footnotes, the opening ceremony happens at the Azteca on June 11th, Shakira performs, 83,000 people lose their minds, and the football swallows everything else. That can happen. It has happened before. But it requires FIFA to resolve in the next 23 days problems that have been building for months. Problems that reflect structural choices about how to run a World Cup, not temporary administrative gaps. The football is ready. The stadiums are ready. The players are ready. The question on May 19th, 2026 is whether everything else is. So here's what I want to know from you today. With 23 days to kick off and everything we've just walked through, the Iran crisis, the SoFi strike threat, the New Jersey transport battle, the workers without contracts, do you think FIFA gets this under control in time? Or do you think one of these stories is going to be the headline that follows the tournament all the way through to July 19th? Leave your answer in the comments. These conversations matter more the closer we get to kickoff. If this breakdown gave you something real, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach the fans who need to hear the full picture. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're here every day now, all the way to the final. This story is still developing, and as always, football never stays quiet for long. See you in the next one.